You got to apply your BCBA certification somewhere. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, here we go. So, welcome to our panel discussion today. We are so grateful for the opportunity to have these panelists as guests and to be able to cover such an important topic like the quilt bag lived experiences as it relates to ABA and even beyond. QUILTBAG is a representation of the LGBTQ++, in which QUILTBAG represents queer, questioning, undecided, intersex, lesbian, trans, bisexual, asexual or allied, and gay or genderqueer. And the U can represent really anything. And it is such a beautiful example of utilizing language to create a more accurate and inclusive representation of a community. Quilt bags are filled with different patterns and textures that are representative of the gender spectrum that we all fall on. And we are just so excited to be speaking with some Kadiant team members for this quilt bag panel today. Thank you all for joining us today. Can we take a moment to go around and introduce ourselves?
Yeah. I'll go first. So my name is Nikki. I'm based in Portland, she, her, and I feel comfortable sharing that I identify as a race.
I'll hop in. Jeremy, I am out of the Atlanta region. My pronouns are he, him, his. My quilt bag identifier is the G. I am gay. And my Kadiant role and position is program supervisor.
I guess that leaves me. Hi, I'm Shosh. I'm based out of the Columbus, Ohio region. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. Quilt bag identifier. Oh my God. Okay. I'm queer and trans. I guess we can get more into the specifics of those later, but I'll stick with those for now. And I'm a lead behavior tech.
Oh, thank y'all so much. And I probably should introduce myself too. I was just so excited to get to y'all. So I'm Amanda Scoggins. I work out of the Bay Area region, and my preferred pronouns are she, her, hers. I also respond to they, even y'all, which is my favorite that I like to use. My quilt bag identifier is bisexual. I am a cisgender female. I do identify as a cisgender female. And my Kadiant role is I'm a region training specialist for the Bay Area, but I'm also Kadiant's community development liaison, which has given me this amazing opportunity to be on platforms like this and engaging with our team members in the community in a way that we're actually putting like DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion into action. So thank you all so much for joining us today. But before we get started, we do want to make sure we communicate that these are the lived experiences of each panel member. And we appreciate the emotional labor each of you is providing today and want to be clear that a practice to be engaged in as an organization is paying for the emotional labor and time, which each of our panelists is being. Because we've talked about this, when you ask for representation and lived experiences, you are actually asking someone to share their available spoons, their energy, and their emotional labor. And not only do you have to be prepared for people to say, no, thank you, or say yes and then no, thank you later, you need to be prepared to value that time through reimbursement. So thank you all for being here again. Now let's get started. I think one of the questions that we want to start with today is, what does it mean to you to be part of the quilt bag community?
It's so awkward. I can go. So for me, being part of the quilt bag community is just being like who I am. I spent a really, really long time, like not, for one, not accepting myself, and then for two, not really having the language to describe like who I was or how I was feeling. And so belonging to the community and kind of educating and talking about my experiences, my goal is to help others feel like they do have a place, and they are valid, and they can be accepted, because that's kind of the journey that I went through. Um, which is why I try to, get up when I have a platform and talk about it, because I think that's the biggest part, is providing people who don't have a community, or who feel like they might be lacking one, a place where they are accepted and embraced.
I'll hop in. First, I want to say, Shosh, that I absolutely love and adore your name. I think it is so
Thank
cool.
you.
And there's a word that you said that was the first word that popped into my mind when Amanda asked the question, and that's journey. I think that being a part of the quilt bag community is exactly that. I think the large majority of us do experience that phase of life where we're just trying to find what it means to be who we are. And that typically starts out being very rough, because usually the communities that we come up in are not very accepting of who we are. And they're not accepting of us going on that journey to figure that out either. So being a part of the quilt bag community for me is about owning who I am, living in it unashamedly, and just moving forward with grace, and extending that olive branch to others, like Shosh has said as well, extending that olive branch to others to help them along that journey, because I think that that's something that the community largely lacks, is that kind of mentor-mentee relationship, because um, I think that the journey it doesn't ever really end. And so it becomes kind of hard to reach out to others when you don't know for yourself where you are, or who you are, or where you're at. So I am thankful to be in a space where I'm kind of able to do both. Grateful for platforms like this, where I can just kind of talk about what the journey has been for me, in hopes that someone can relate and it helps them along theirs.
Man, I feel that. I feel that.
I
I feel both of you. I see both of you. So like, I want to say the journey for me has been pretty wild, and like between like in the intersections in which I fall, being like Arrow and Ace and Black, there's been like a lot of erasure and a lot of confusion about like how somebody like me could exist, and if I even belong at like a a pride bar, or a queer bar or whatever. But like for me, I've been lucky most of my adult life to have some pretty amazing platforms to speak on. I've done panels at Comic-Con. I have been lucky enough to make comic books, queer comic books, and people have reached out to me, just to like talk to me or thank me, and just be like, I really like your queer comics. I found some stuff out about myself, or I identify this way, and I've never seen myself represented in the media ever, and this is the first time I've felt seen in the media. And I guess where my heart stands is like, I'm really proud to be who I am, and I am very passionate about helping other people with the terminology, so that they can describe how they're feeling, and find community for it, because that is one of the biggest parts about even having the queer community, is to like have it around you and validate you, and to find representation for you, because like no matter what anybody says, that is so important. And I don't know, I like to be out there as a calming force that will like talk sweetly to other aces and be like, it's okay to not date, it's okay to not it's okay to not do the things that society tells you that you need to do, because those are things that you can choose for yourself. And there's a lot of feelings about like just kind of like sexuality is a huge part of being human, and you're like sitting here, Ace, and you're like, is it? So yeah, my journey has been pretty wild, and I'm very proud of it, and I'm proud of like how far I've come in it, and I'm happy to be here talking with you all today.
Well, we cannot thank y'all enough for sharing for being here today and for sharing what it means for y'all to be to be a part of the quilt bag community. And I so relate with everything that y'all said is that it takes a village, it takes a tribe for you to be able to really get the most out of life. And having a quilt bag community for myself is this safe space. And I have a lot of privilege that I walk around with as a cisgender female who identifies as bisexual. It is in my own experience something that comes with its own sort of privileges. And for myself, it has just been this beautiful thing for a community to open up to everybody and help us recognize and really relate or understand each other more. I think that's so important. And so, Nikki, I love that you brought up intersectionality because that's where we're going, y'all. So recently, Congress has passed an Asian hate crimes law to respond to the increase in hate crimes across the country. But intersectionality is crucial to passing equitable and inclusive laws that dismantle systems of oppression. What is intersectionality and how does it apply to quilt bag rights, laws, and ultimately protections?
Intersectionality for me is about the kind of conglomeration of identities that make you who you are. Intersectionality, if I were to call out my own terms, is being Black, being gay, being male. All of those things intersect in a way that has created who I am. And I want to further clarify, I think, on the male part, because I think that has much more to do with my being Black as well than it does with just being a gender. Because we all know, obviously, the privilege that I have in being male. But there's a clash, I guess you can say, within my intersectionality that happens because I am both male and Black in my community. I guess, and gay too. I mean, that's where the clash happens. So for me, intersectionality is just the coming together of all those identities that make you who you are.
Yeah, I agree. Well, as for intersectionality, I just kind of think, yeah, it's a combination of all of the ways that you identify, and each of those things make you unique. And each of those identities, when they compound, I don't want to say they mean different things, but they make you more and more unique. So like if you are Black, that is an experience that a lot of people have. If you are Black and ace, that is an experience that a lot of people have, but being Black and ace is different than being only Black, and it's different than being only ace. If you are, any of these identities, it's different than any other collection of any of the identities. Your experiences will be different. So that's my definition of intersectionality, is just kind of how your experiences are different based on your compounding identities that make you you.
That's a really good way of phrasing it. I like the word compounding. When you said that, I don't know if you saw me off to the side, but I was like, yeah, that really hits. That's awesome. Another way I like to look at it, because it is the ways that our different identities come together to make us who we are, but I think we can also look at intersectionality, kind of getting back to Amanda's question, as like how that impacts the way we're treated or viewed by society. And how different protections or laws or systems of oppression come into play, like depending on your different, like the crossroads of your identities, right?
Yeah,
um so
look
like
in the road.
I'm a trans person, I'm a queer person. There are specific systems of oppression that are targeted toward me. Thankfully Ohio isn't doing yet any of those bathroom bans. I don't know if you guys have seen in the news recently, but a couple states are now requiring businesses to advertise if they allow trans people in their bathrooms, which is, you
Wow.
know, yeah, it sure is something. And so, there are systems of oppression, and there are laws actively being made to target people like myself. But at the same time, understanding my intersections and how my privilege works, like with my marginalized identities, I am a white person still, right? And so there are like systematic inequalities that I will never experience. And so I think when we go to discuss the idea of intersectionality, I also think it's a really good time for self-reflection and kind of taking a look at yourself and seeing what kind of path or like picture your identity set up, and looking at like other individuals and seeing where you guys align maybe and where you don't, and understanding different perspectives.
That was such a good
Absolutely.
explanation. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was so
Absolutely.
good.
100%.
Wasn't it? And Nikki had explained it to me the other day in a way that like I just thought was so impactful about like these roads that like there's a, and is it okay if I explain it, or Nikki, would you
Please,
like
yeah.
to do it? Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to use Nikki as an example because I feel like my intersectionality is so limited. But there's a black road, right? That goes along, and she's going along. And then an ACEs road, and at some point those roads meet, and it's figuring out how those work together and how they work differently. And Shosh, it was just so beautiful, that self-reflection piece, because you're right, like we all have privileges and we all are being marginalized, a lot of people more so than others, and this is an opportunity for us to take a look at ourselves. And something that I would love to like just sidetrack on, if y'all are okay with, is Nikki does comic books in which she represents intersectionality within her comic books. And this is an amazing way for us to take action outside of the legal realm, right? Because laws guide the way we interact, but we also need media out there.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Like media reaches so many people. So many art is very, very, very powerful. And like, while I might not be out there on the front lines getting pepper sprayed and, marching and all of that scary, draining stuff, but like my activism is like me sitting at a desk drawing comics of, I don't know, black people being queer, and like putting it online, and showing people that they are represented and that they matter, and giving them terminology, or and starting a dialogue, and humanizing us and normalizing us. And that's also a really big part of it. Like, I get really excited when I see queer Black people on TV or in comics. I'm just like, that's me. And that is so important, because the normalization and the humanization of us in the media is so important. I can hardly even, talk about how important that is. And yeah, I mean, I'm all excited. So I'm all excited. Just like, representation is just so important, and it's important for content creators, but it's also important for like kids, and it's important for teens that are just kind of like, ooh, I know I'm different, but how? And then go ahead. You literally, jump in.
I did want to interrupt you, but like I literally lived the story you're talking about. So like my entire childhood, I was like, yo, something's different. I'm not fitting in right. For context, I don't have to share this, but I'm choosing to because it makes my story make more sense. I'm AFAB. I was assigned female at birth. My entire childhood, people use she, her pronouns for me. I grew up thinking I was supposed to be a girl. I spent a really long time feeling different and isolated because I didn't fit in with all the other girls in my schools or my classes. I was very, very different always. And then I came out as gay, and I was like, okay, that kind of helps, but not really. It made some sense, but it didn't fix the problem. And it wasn't until I got really heavily into like I'm gonna be that person. I'm gonna bring up Tumblr. I'm gonna say it. I was
Tumblr.
really, yeah, it's Tumblr and
Tumblr's a
TikTok,
godsend.
right?
Yeah.
But I was really like in deep on Tumblr, and I found the word non-binary, and it was like a light opened up and just started shining down, right? Like
Gosh.
I saw that word, and it was immediate connection.
Yes. I really
Um,
That's
feel that.
beautiful. That is
it
beautiful.
was, and I was 17. I had
Hmm.
gone my entire childhood thinking I was wrong or something because I just didn't have the terminology. So Nikki,
Yes.
I love that you keep bringing up that language piece because it's so important.
It
Um,
is so important. And Tumblr was a great place to learn about queer identity back in the day when in Tumblr's heyday before it, did the thing. But
yes.
but like there were just threads on just like here's all of the different types of attraction, here's a lot of the different genders that we have named, here's all of this and that. And Tumblr was a great, amazing like light bulb going on and off. And like Steven Universe, for instance, it
Oh,
shed
love
a
Steven
lot of,
Universe.
yeah, Steven Universe, like it's a show for kids, but and like I think I learned the term non-binary from one of my friends discussing Steven Universe. They're like, Stevani's gonna be non-binary, and I'm just like, I
Yes.
feel like I should know what this means, but please explain it. And then they explained it, and I was like, okay, sorry. This is really cool. And so, like, you learn things from the media, and you normalize it, and it humanizes the identity. And the media is very powerful, and historically, the media has been so powerful, not only to fight the power, but to just learn about yourself. And it's entertaining and beautiful. So that's
I just think it's so crazy that in 2021 we're still even using the word humanizing. That people are still fighting for that right to be humanized,
mm,
to just exist,
mhm.
in the world as who they are. It blows my mind. It is the one thing that keeps me surprised when we have these conversations, and I've had them so many times. But every time I hear that, I'm like, wow, there are still people that exist here that are not considered people, who aren't considered, their identity isn't considered real. and
Mhm.
and like you said, because media is so important, especially to these little kids out here, imagine what that does to them. So I am glad. I was a huge user of Tumblr as well, and still am, even though it took that nasty fall, but neither here nor there. It definitely did change my life as well. It provided a community. It provided a community, and that goes to your point, Nikki, of how important things like media are.
Mhm. Yeah, I never had a Tumblr, but all my friends did, and they would just send me posts, just kind of like, I saw this description of identity, and I thought of you, and I was like, oh my goodness.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It still is a really beautiful place, honestly.
Well, and I think this would be a great opportunity, Shosh, if you're okay with it, and Jeremy and Nikki, to talk about like the different umbrellas. It was something that we were checking in right before we started the panel about, and it helps create context when you understand. Would y'all mind chatting about that for just a moment? No? Okay, lovely. Thank you.
I can cover the gender umbrella if y'all are cool with that.
Sure.
Please do.
Okay.
Learn us
So
something.
I'm trying to think of there's a lot of subdivisions within gender, so
Hmm.
I'm trying to think of the best way to frame it. And I guess where I'll start with is the like idea of gender as a whole, right? And Amanda, you've been using this term over the course of the recording so far, but you've been calling yourself a cis woman, right? And so there are two like base identifiers, and there's cis and then there's trans, right? And so cis people are, you identify as the gender you were assigned at birth. So if you were assigned female at birth and you're a girl, you're cis. If you were assigned male at birth and you're a man, you're cis. And that's somewhat dismissive of intersex identities, but not my lived experience. And I don't want to say something wrong. Would love some feedback and some knowledge on that one, but that's also on me to educate myself. Um, so cis identities, and then there's trans identities. And so if you're trans, you identify as something other than what you were assigned at birth. And so then the term transgender or trans is an umbrella in and of itself, and it breaks down into binary trans people and then non-binary trans people. So binary trans people are kind of what everyone thinks of when they hear like the term transgender. It's someone who moves from one binary gender to another. So someone who is assigned female at birth but identifies as a man is a trans man. Someone who is assigned male at birth but identifies as a woman is a trans woman. And then there's the non-binary umbrella. And so non-binary is occasionally used as an identifier, and that's totally chill. It's not my personal identifier, but that's, it can be used as such. But more broadly speaking, it's also an umbrella term to simply mean your gender is anything that does not fall within the binary. So you can be non-binary and then have more specific labels under that. For example, I identify as a trans masculine person. I'm agender. My kiddo, my child, is trigender, which is a wild one. I love that so much. And then my spouse is moves between agender and genderqueer, right? And so those are all different identities that fall within the non-binary umbrella, but they're very unique. They're very complex. I can't say I understand any person's gender as well as I understand my own, but they all fall within that non-binary umbrella. They're just more specific terms kind of down underneath it. Did I do okay?
Oh my gosh, that was amazing. Okay. That was amazing is what it was.
Yeah.
I've spent so much time thinking about how to break it down because I think people forget sometimes that non-binary is it's an identifier. I saw someone the other day call it a non-identifier because it's basically just identifying what you don't belong to, right? And I really like that because that's all the information it's giving you, is just saying, nope, I'm not a man, not a woman. You can figure it out from there. If I can figure it out from there, maybe I know my labels, maybe I don't, but all I know is I'm not binary, right? And I think that's fantastic because it doesn't, it's just telling you the the littlest amount of information, and it's this whole identity category. I don't know, it's fascinating to me. I love it. It makes me really excited. I'm happy I'm happy I'm gay. Like, yeah, but that's not the term I'm talking about. I'm happy I'm non-binary.
Yes, I'm so happy for you. My heart's so happy. My heart's like smiling right now.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think right here would be a cool time to like give a shout out to this Two-Spirit community. Just
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain?
I love the fluidity in what you were saying, Shosh. That's kind of what you were saying pointed out to me. You said that your spouse moves between those identifiers. And I love that you pointed it out because it is a spectrum and you do have that freedom. We do have that freedom to move about it as we please.
Absolutely.
Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Well, and I do think it would be really great to define what a Two-Spirit is, if y'all are okay with that.
It is an identity that Indigenous people feel, and I don't know too much more than that. Yeah. I don't know if I feel perfectly comfortable sitting here and explaining how that identity feels, but yeah, shout out to them though.
It's an Indigenous non-binary identity that was it has very long roots that are heavily linked with colonization, unfortunately. It's proof that non-binary identities have existed for far longer than we ever try to think about. But same with Nikki. I don't know. It's beyond my scope of competency, and so I don't want to say anything.
Just shout out. We see you.
We see you, we hear from you. You're appreciated. You're valid. All that stuff.
Well, and right, all that part, all those parts. And I think that this is a really beautiful opportunity for people to see it being modeled for them, how to talk about things that they may not understand in entirety. You're not being silenced. It's just be cautious about how you approach a subject that you really don't understand, or approach talking about a community that you may not be an actual part of. It's important that we have that humility. Y'all know I love to say we need to put down our egos at the door and get our humble backpacks on and start eating our humble pie, because that's where we stand. And I think that this may be a cool opportunity to talk about the misgendering as well, because what you're talking about, what we see is that it's almost like there's this assumption that we're supposed to tell people where our sexuality lies, where our gender spectrum lies, and that is really for people to consent about. And if you make an error, be humble. Speak up about your error, and please do not put it on the individual. All too often I see people say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I made that mistake," going on and on. And it's like, apologize for the mistake. And then you as an individual who made the mistake, please step away and go take some deep breaths and work through it on your own.
Mm-hmm.
I think a part of the human condition is this desire to place people and things in boxes. And I don't want to ever present myself like I know it all, or like I'm perfect, because I'm absolutely not. I make these same mistakes. I don't make the mistake of misgendering people, but I make the mistake of trying to place people in boxes. And I think that is something that we don't do purposely. I think that a lot of the times it is subconsciously done. But as we spoke about earlier, self-reflection is a thing, and we need to do it constantly. And we need to be aware that this is a thing that we do and take the necessary steps to correct it. So yes, misgendering is absolutely 100% inappropriate, disrespectful, dismissive, just all around wrong. And I think that we just have to do the work. We have to do the work so that we aren't making those mistakes.
I like how you said humans have a tendency to put things into boxes and categories, because you're totally right. And along with it being subconscious, I also think, especially in terms of gender and sexuality, I think it's taught. I think
Absolutely.
we can draw it back to ABA if we really want to, and the work that we do with our kiddos. But I think we are taught from a very young age, how do I quote unquote identify someone as a girl or a boy, and I've seen that reflected in the kids that I work with, because my hair's been this is the longest my hair has been, like 8 years, but it's usually pretty short. I have kind of a deeper voice, but I have a lot of mixed characteristics going on. I'm a fun little mixed bag. And so I'll have my kids look at me and be like, "What are you? Are you a girl or a boy?" And like, it coming from a kiddo, it's not that offensive, because they're just confused. And especially with the kids that we work with, we've taught them to sort things this way, And I think that self-reflection that you were talking about, Jeremy, I think a lot of what that comes down to is unlearning this categorization that we've been taught, and understanding that specific physical characteristics don't necessarily indicate someone's gender or sexuality or their pronouns. And once we unlearn that, then we can start seeing people for how they actually are, or we can start avoiding gendering people that we don't know as a whole, until they decide, if they choose to share that information with us. And then once we can do that, then we can adjust the way that we then teach that categorization, or we teach that acknowledgement of other people, and have an effect on younger
Absolutely.
generations.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to point out that we have to take that journey for ourselves as well. We have to unlearn that categorization for ourselves so that we can figure out how to identify, and then be able to say to another person, you don't have to place yourself to this box. We don't know that we don't have to place ourselves into that box until we know for ourselves that we don't have to do it.
Mm-hmm. I would like to cut in and say that, misgendering is just straight up aggression, and it's like a violent snatch of autonomy. And it is
that was a word. That was a word.
I mean, like everything that Shosh was saying, I was just kind of like, ooh, autonomy. I love it. I love the autonomy, the consent of everything they're saying. And then I don't know, every once in a while I have to like think about how things are so many people are so concerned about knowing everything, and it's really, and that's just kind of, you know, how culture and language is. Culture is there to, you know, help you understand things. Language is there to help you understand things. We're slowly expanding language so that we can help describe more things. Though so many people are not okay not having words for things and not completely understanding things, and labeling it as soon as you can, which is, you know, cool, and also at the same time maybe not so cool. Sometimes you just have to like not understand it but respect it, and that's a muscle to start flexing in and of itself. And when it comes to gender and it comes to sex, like there's just so much out there. There's so much science out there. There's like so many chromosomes out there. I'm just like, there's never ever going to be like enough terminology to explain it all, but accept it and just respect it. This is something that Jeremy said in the Black and Behavior podcast. He's like, I don't need you to understand me. I need you to respect me. And, you know, and I was just like, oh, I love that so much. But yeah, reeling it back, I don't believe in microaggressions. I only believe in aggressions. If you ask somebody to use a specific pronoun and they abjectly refuse to do it for any reason that they could ever fathom, and if they don't even at least try, then it is incredibly disrespectful. So that's kind of where I stand on it. And if you do misgender somebody, then like don't like be so over the top and out of pocket about it that you need to turn them into the people that comfort you after they're the ones that just got misgendered. Like if you misgender somebody and then you realize it, just a quick sorry, fix it, and then try to not make a big deal about it, because like it is so much more awkward for like the affected party than you, the person who has done misgendering. So I also wanted to throw that out.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, Shosh, go for it. You do you, boo.
I was just gonna say absolutely. And speaking from experience, unfortunately, when someone does misgender me and then they have a moment, is the best way I can phrase it. What it does is it puts the onus of it forces me to forgive them and then comfort them, when in reality I'm not ready to quite let that one go yet. And
Yeah.
it also reduces, it's a punisher, right? It reduces the likelihood of that in the future I'm going to provide you that feedback and I'm going to trust you with more information about myself. If I don't feel like I can gently correct you on my pronouns without you having a meltdown, I'm not going to put in the effort. I'm not going to maintain that relationship, right?
Yeah.
I think when I was with Amanda earlier this month, I talked about someone sharing their pronouns with you being an act of trust, and an act of respect. And so if I extend, I think Jeremy, you said that olive branch earlier, and it's not returned with the same measure of respect or trust, then I'm not going to maintain that, right? So showing the trans people in your life that you do respect them and you do care about them by, you know, quick apology, fix yourself, and keep on trucking. It's the best way you can handle misgendering someone on accident.
Absolutely.
Yes, listeners, take note. Do not beat yourself up and make a scene if you misgender somebody. It's
So
not the
awkward.
best way to do things. Man.
Right. Well, and what I was going to say is that I cannot wait until we have generations of children who their reflex is to identify in the neutral. I am not only a cisgender female who identifies as bisexual, but I am also a single mother. And I have a 6-year-old daughter. And it is very important to me that she holds the responsibility of that neutrality, and that to me is where we need to move. But misgendering, this was all around misgendering, which is really to what Nikki was saying. what people consider microaggressions, but I love that Nikki calls it what it is, because it really is an aggression once someone has communicated that to you. And we almost use this microaggression to dismiss what's occurring, because it makes us feel more comfortable. But I would love if we could take a moment to define heterosexist and heteronormative and talk about how y'all have experienced heterosexism or heteronormative statements or microaggressions. We were chatting about it just a bit, but would love to talk more about it, because I know that when we're talking about intersectionality, there are microaggressions or aggressions that are occurring for other identifiers that we have.
Absolutely. I want to kind of jump in first here, because I don't really have a textbook definition of what heteronormative and heterosexism is. But I would like to speak to it from an experience perspective. And for me, these things are systems. They're systems of oppression, much like racism is a system of oppression, much like ableism is a system of oppression. And these things are created, they are enacted, they are constructed with the purpose of removing autonomy. I absolutely love that phrase that Nikki said, that violent snatch of autonomy, because it's so applicable to so many different things. And I think that that's what the enforcement of heteronormativity and heterosexism is that violent snatch of autonomy. And that's really all I have to offer of it. How have I experienced it? Heteronormativity for me has been growing up with a religious background, being in a church and being told that I can't hold hands with this little boy that I think is cute. Heteronormativity is walking down the street now and not feeling comfortable holding hands with my significant other because of what somebody might say or do. Those are just kind of, some of the ways that I've just very briefly experienced those things. And again, I think that there's systems that are made to make me feel, to make the QUILTBAG community feel belittled, feel undervalued, and feel like we don't have the same level of freedom that people of other communities have.
I feel that. I feel like heteronormativity is just so hurtful. And I want to say that, I'm going to go back to media because that's just kind of where I live. But how many TV protagonists have you seen in children's media that are queer? Every once in a while in children's media, you might see a kid with two moms, maybe. But ultimately, the vast majority of what you see in children's TV is very heteronormative. And I don't know, it's just perpetuated in every facet of life. I worked at daycare for 10 years, and the girls came draped in pink, and the boys came, draped in, just kind of dull greens and oranges, blues, nothing ever bright. And it's like, everybody deserves color, everybody deserves cars, everybody deserves Barbies. Everybody deserves to see themselves represented in the media. And in addition, adults teach this. 2 children will be playing in my toddler classroom. They're 2 years old, and I don't know, a parent will come in and be like, oh, they're so cute, they're gonna date when they get older. If a little boy and a little girl are, playing blocks together. And as a teacher, you're just kind of like, no, they're not. I promise you. They won't. But it's also just kind of sexualizing, and you're sexualizing kids, and you're thinking too much about what's under their clothes, and it needs to just stop. It needs to stop. I would very much like for it to stop. I think that, I don't know, just perpetuating it, thinking about it, and forcing this on children will like stunt self-exploration, and it will form ideas that are old and archaic but yet still around for some reason, and it's all backwards. It's all very backwards, and I don't like it. That's where I'm at.
I think it's around, if I can just hop in one more time, guys. I think it's around for purposes of comfort and also for fear. And I will also say that I hate even admitting it, but I share that fear. I have a nephew, the most adorable little black boy you've ever seen in your life.
Mhm.
And for me, as a openly gay uncle, I don't know that I am even 100% comfortable with the idea of my nephew coming to me and saying, Uncle Jay, I'm something along the QUILTBAG community that's not straight. Because I fear him having to go through and deal with what I had to go through and deal with. And it's one thing to experience that firsthand, as you know, as who I am. But man, I just don't know that I could handle seeing my nephew go through that. So I think that heteronormativity has affected me in that way as well, where it has made me fear, um, my loved ones not following along that line of heteronormativity. Um, just, hoping and wishing and praying that they can live lives where they're not affected in the ways that I've been affected. Because again, the journey it hasn't been sweet. It hasn't always been great. I'm at a place now where it's much better, but I don't want that. I don't want that for them.
Yeah, I'm hugging you and your family mentally. Shosh, it looks like you wanted to hop in.
Yeah, I've been compiling ideas
Yeah,
as I
feel free to
listen
hop
to
in
this.
aggressively. Just like snatch the mic. Do it.
I like what
Yes.
everyone is saying, though. I don't want to stop your flow. It's awesome. So for clarification, because I don't know if we ever fully put it into words yet, heteronormativity is the idea that heterosexuality is the norm. Heterosexism is any system that perpetuates the idea or upholds the idea that heterosexuality is the norm. But Jeremy, what you said about not being able to hold hands with someone in church, like it's and I think Nikki, you mentioned it too, where people were saying their kids are going to date when they're older. Like heteronormativity is being okay with your 6-year-old having a crush on a boy, but then when they come out to you as a lesbian at 11, whoa, you're too young. How do you know that you're actually
Yes.
gay? How do you know that you're actually bi? It's the idea that you have to be an adult to know your sexuality unless you're heterosexual because you were born that. Like everyone's born heterosexual. What? Um, I think that's a big part of it. When I came out as not straight, I was 12 or 13, and my parents completely thought it was a phase. Jokes on them because I'm still gay, but and I think I think, and they're fully accepting now. Mom, Dad, if you hear this, I'm so sorry. But like, I think a lot of it stems from that fear that you were talking about, Jeremy, where they were afraid for me of having a rough life, or they were afraid of me being hurt or persecuted or targeted, and I think that fear got misplaced into dismissal, right? And I think that's a lot. I totally think you're right. If that's a lot of what upholds heteronormativity. Um,
Mhm.
but something I'm still experiencing is when I go to a new client, um, I learn their life, right? We get to know our families very, very well. And I have to be very, very careful about the information that I share with them. Usually I mention my son first because it's socially acceptable for me to have a kiddo, right? But I have to really thoroughly vet a family or an environment before I feel safe letting them know that I have a wife, right?
Mm.
Because people still gender me as female for some reason, and so it's blatantly obvious. Like if I say I have a wife, that confirms it, right? That confirms my queerness. Um, And that can be scary because that can flip a switch, right?
Man,
Um,
yeah.
I had a family sometime recently where I never intended to tell them that I had a wife, and it slipped out of my mouth one day, and I immediately had a panic attack, because I I vetted this. I saw this family. I saw them every day. I knew what their opinions were, and I did not think it would go well. And for that to slip out of my mouth was one of the scariest experiences because I was mid-session, so it was one of the scariest experiences of my life. And it didn't end badly, thankfully, but heteronormativity is that fear, right? Of not being able to tell a family, or of having to like withhold information about myself from a family because I don't know if it'll be accepted.
Mm.
And it's also having to come out endlessly, right? It's the idea of coming whole, for one, but it's also having to come out endlessly to everyone all the time. And not just with sexuality, but also there's cis normativity, right? The idea that being cis is the norm. It's having to come out probably for the rest of my life, and knowing that if I don't come out, people aren't gonna know me. They're not gonna get me right. They're not gonna use my pronouns. And knowing that if I'm not there, people are going to assume something, right? Um, it's that stress of having to look at every person and go, will this person be okay with me? Will this person use my pronouns? Will this person accept me for who I am? It's never one and done, right? And it's this continuous pressure, it's this continuous stress to, on one hand, share myself, and then on the other hand, um, got a lot deeper than I meant to, but yeah, uh, that's heteronormativity, and that's cisnormativity, right? It makes us come out and go through what is can be a traumatic process.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I definitely feel you there. Were you finished? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go for it. I was rambling. You're all good.
I'm just like, man, I still haven't come out to my client family. And they'll even say stuff like they seem really queer friendly, but it's just kind of like, when is it talking about yourself and when is it politics? I'm just like, every identity I have can be possibly attributed as politics. I'm just like, I'm Black, I'm queer. Is that politics? Is me being alive politics?
Isn't it awful that our identities must be politics for some?
My identity is politics.
I hate that. I
hate it.
It's political. Oh,
Like,
sorry, I interrupted you.
no, I was just like, I feel like I feel like I've definitely been kicked off of a case by saying that I didn't like a specific restaurant chain because of politics, and I'm like extra cautious because I don't want to accidentally talk about politics at work by saying, yes, I have a girlfriend, or yes, I think I think my life matters. Is that politics? So it's really frustrating. It's hard. It's like, it's already hard to have to continuously come out because of heteronormativity, but also it's just like, when is identity politics and when is it not? I mean, we're out here saying, be proud of who you are, but is it politics? So it's hard. I'm just kind of like, I would love to, talk about my girlfriend at work, but I also don't want to, overshare. I don't want to get kicked off of my case because I love it. It's just, it's hard to know where the boundaries are. So
We talked about this on the last ITAV episode as well. And I mean, that's exactly what it is, right? It's just not knowing, much like you, Shosh. I've gone into households and I'm immediately cognizant of my mannerisms. I'm cognizant of the timbre of my voice. Because at least within my community, specifically referencing the Black community here, there are certain ways that you say words that people have identified and affiliated with being gay. It is that intricate to where, I police how I walk even, to make sure that there isn't that slight little twist in my hips. You know what I mean? Like, which I do have naturally, thanks to my mother, I blame her. Um, and that's not a complaint because I love her to death. But yeah, so that's how I've experienced it as well, is really having to really be cognizant of everything that I do and how I do it when I'm in someone's home, because you do not know. You do not know. I remember I was on a case, black woman, lovely woman, mother of the kiddo that I had. And this was probably last year. And it was Pride Month, and Cartoon Network is now showing commercials that support Pride Month, blah blah blah. And one of those commercials came on, and the mom said, um, "Why are they showing this on a kids' television network?" And I was just immediately like, "Oh my god." Do I respond? Do I not say anything? Like, what happens to, because the woman was absolutely lovely, nothing but nice to me. I don't know if she knew how I identified. A lot of the times I assume that people do know, because I consider myself to be pretty flamboyant. And when I don't police things like how I talk and how I move, I think it's pretty easy to identify. So I don't know how she thought I identified, but when she said that to me, it was like, this lady has no idea that I am gay, because otherwise, why would you say that? Why would you say that and create this uncomfortable environment for me, whether it's in your house or not? So yeah, those are the things that living in a heteronormative society and world cause you to deal with and navigate. Those are the spaces that we have to constantly be in.
Mm,
One of
yeah, I
my
feel you.
r- sorry, one of my biggest formative experiences as a provider in this field. Um, this was one of the first kiddos I ever worked with. He and I were like you ever work with a kid and you guys just click a little bit better than that kiddo does with other
Absolutely.
providers. Yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
was me and this kid. We just hit it off right away. He was so sweet. The family, they had a vibe where you're like, okay, you're probably chill, it's cool, and I was still learning where the line was, because I this was like, couple months into me working in the field. I was, brand new, like squeaky clean, all that stuff. And I mentioned being gay one too many times and got pulled off the case immediately with no room for feedback or correction. And it's about 4 years ago since that happened, and I'm still sore about it. And it still shapes every interaction I have with the family that I'm starting with now, because that was a reminder. Like, I had forgotten, I got too comfortable and I had forgotten that this still existed. And it was a really, really sharp reminder of the fact that, like, my identity, like you said, Nikki, is political. It is a thing that people are iffy about hearing. It's not considered the norm, and that can put people off. And it was like a slap in the face. And it's still, like, it doesn't make me upset anymore, but it still stings a little bit when I think about it. And I think about the fact that I had, trusted this family with my identity, and instead of giving me that feedback, they just pulled me out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their decision. Each parent can do what they want. It's their kiddo. But I just, to this day, I just wish I had had the chance to speak to them
It
about it.
breaks my heart. It breaks my heart, and to just take it, because again, this hearing that story shows, it just brings me back to that fear, right? Because we can take this we can level up with this, if you will. There's this fear that I live with, where if um, one of the family members, if a family identifies me as gay prior to my telling them, that they now feel like I'm going to try to do something inappropriate to their child. That is a constant thought that I have, especially when I work with, these young men kiddos, or young boy kiddos, that this family, because different cultures view it completely differently as well. So there's different I guess, levels of intensity that comes with revealing who you are to one family or another. And, I most fear that within my own community, the Black community, coming out as gay, or it being revealed that I'm gay, or the family figuring that out in some way, and them immediately feeling like, are you touching my child? What are y'all doing when I'm not in the room? There's that fear um, that I have to live with
Mm-hmm.
that, and it's so tiring. It's so laboring,
Yeah.
and it breaks my heart. Like it generally makes me emotional, because it's like, man, all I
Yeah.
did was wake up today. That's literally all I did,
Showed up to
and here
work.
we are.
A lot of people in the queer trans community get immediately sexualized, hypersexualized.
Hmm.
And like, as soon as somebody hears that your identity is not like cis straight, they're just kind of like, what are you doing to children? You're like, I'm working. I'm not doing anything weird. But like, it's incredibly upsetting. And it's just one of the next reasons why, heteronormativity, and I don't know, it's just kind of like, why is this only happening to like queer trans people? Because in my book, we have been very safe with children generally. And if somebody does predate on a kid, it's not about sexuality, it's about power. So it's just kind of like, we have been vetted, we have done our background checks, we are all very safe with children here. And yet, as soon as somebody knows that you're queer, you just kind of get hypersexualized and then kind of demonized. And it's really scary. So, I mean, just throwing that out there.
And are there ways that we can respond, whether it be as supervisors or organizations, or out in the public, to these aggressions? Because we're not going to call them microaggressions, y'all, because that really devalues what's happening.
Mhm.
Are there ways that we can respond to these? Because, for instance, what I learned and will always do, is when you see someone from the Black community engaging with police, stopping and checking in and making sure that that Black individual is feeling comfortable and safe, and standing with them until it's over. Because that provides some security for the individual. It lets them know we're in this together. And so I'm just wondering if there's any practices that would be helpful. I know we talked about like taking accountability for misgendering, taking on the responsibility of dealing with the discomfort of your misgendering.
Mhm.
But would there be any other suggestions?
So I think that I don't know that there's much that can be done as the person who's being aggressed towards, especially in that moment. Um, on a larger scale, on a grander scale, I think I think that companies and organizations can be um, very, what's the word I want to use here? They can make it apparent that they do support these identities, that these identities are persons that work at this company or organization. And I think that if families, or people outside of the organization see that initially, then there's a greater chance that if someone is in the home who identifies along quilt bag, for instance, it'll make it just that much easier for us to navigate that space. Or if in some way we had that Freudian slip, and now this family knows that we have a wife, um, or that I'm gay, that it's not so much of a shock, because they know that this organization is an organization that supports people who identify along those lines. I hope maybe there's some suggestions that Nikki or Shosh can give me of how to react. I will say that in the past, my reactions probably haven't been the best. But I can also say that I genuinely don't know how to react in situations like that. I don't know what the um I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know what you're supposed to do.
I would like to cut in unless Shosh, you have something to say. All right. So I want to say that if something like that happens to you in the workplace, you need to be able to know your rights. You should know that you have the right to leave the workplace if at any point you feel uncomfortable. And like every once in a while, I have, back in the day, not lately, but like I used to feel pretty uncomfortable during cases, and I was just kind of like, where is the threshold of where I am too uncomfortable? Like being a little uncomfortable is cool, right? um but like being extremely uncomfortable, like where is that? So it's like if you are at all uncomfortable on a case, you have the right to leave. So know that if the family says something that, especially if they accuse you of something, just go ope and then just leave. Just say nothing, immediately report it to your supervisor, and the supervisor will talk to the family and sort it out. The supervisor will probably point to the contract that the family signed. The family signed a contract that I'm not even 100% sure what is on it, but they are supposed to respect you and make you feel safe, and they are supposed to accept you, and you know, it's a professionalism kind of thing. So if they're being unprofessional, you definitely need to let your supervisor know so that they can have that conversation. And yeah, if you are a supervisor and you are in that situation, be sure to check in with your BT and let them know that it's not their fault for existing and it's not going to be held against them. And yeah, just, comfort them and let them know that everything is okay. Did anybody else want to add anything?
Yes, I can speak actually to a direct experience, kind of what we've been talking about. I I had a family in the past year or so where I did get to a point where I was uncomfortable, even stepping foot in the house. It was, right around election time. Spent the area in which this family was. I got to drive by a lot of really aggressive signage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you catch my drift.
Oh yeah.
And so just being in that area, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
Like I have a rainbow on the back of my car, I'm gonna die, and so it's entering that geographical space and then entering that house within that geographical space, and then hearing the family say things that met the expectation of that. You guys understand what I'm saying here, right?
Oh yeah.
I was exposed to some pretty unfortunate ideas and language, and I felt really icky constantly, and I felt anxious, and it got to the point where I was like, okay, I need to get off this team, and I delayed it for weeks because I felt bad that I would be disrupting this kiddo's service, asking to be taken.
Yeah, you're just like, where's the threshold hold of uncomfortable that yeah.
Yeah, I spent weeks trying to think about the best way to bring this up to my super. I talked to my therapist about it. I wrote a script. I had lists of reasons, right? Like I really felt like this was gonna be like the fight of my life to try to get off this team because I was uncomfortable. And I go to my RD and I say, hey, this is happening. I don't feel safe. I want to leave. And right when I was ready to start giving my reasons, she looks at me and she goes, Shosh, you don't have to defend yourself. Absolutely, we will get you off this team. And I was off the team in about 3 days.
Yeah.
I didn't have to go back out there. They talked to the family ended up leaving, but I don't know if that's directly related or not. But like the way that my supers handled it, where they checked in, they got me on a new case, and they made sure I was comfortable in the new home.
Mhm.
They let me know that my discomfort was valid, right? And they
Mhm.
took me seriously without me having to provide proof, right?
Mhm.
They saw my discomfort at face value and said, no, yeah, absolutely, let's get you somewhere where you feel comfortable. It's the best way to handle that. And Nikki, that's exactly what you said, right? But being I'm happy kind of that I can speak about it from experience and kind of provide a bit of a model, I guess. Just because it really was an exceptional way of handling it. I'm really, really happy with the way it went down. I feel safe with my current caseload. I feel, accepted and comfortable. And it really does go out to my supers and my RD for being the ones to kind of get me out of there and put me in a better place and listen
Yes.
to the words I had to say.
Shout out to Socia's Soups.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
Shout out to
Right.
Kadiant, because that's not the norm. That's not typical. So I am glad that we are a part of a community, a work community where that can be the case. That does acknowledge us, that does respect us. I think that's the exception.
Well, and to all of y'all's point, like from what we've been, like what y'all have been talking about, if someone from the quilt bag community is approaching you in a work environment to talk to you about the hostility or discomfort that they're experiencing, that action of coming to you takes courage in and of itself. And then to require evidence, that is not an equitable practice. An equitable practice is hearing that feedback and not requiring this person to walk through everything that happens, because it is traumatic, these experiences. And when you ask someone to prove that they're feeling discriminated against, to prove that they've had aggressions put on them, you're asking them to relive those traumatic experiences. And so I just speak as like a supervisor myself. I say thank you when team members bring things to me. I follow up a day or two later. I check in a week later. I check in a month later, because guess what? Traumatic experiences like that don't just go away because you got that initial like, oh, I hear you, let's fix it. It's still there. You're still experiencing it. We are all humans, and emotions kind of take over us sometimes, and that's okay. And we need to protect all of our team members, and most especially our marginalized team members. And I say that as a cisgendered white woman who has privilege. I need to protect the team members I support, and I need to be allies for my colleagues.
Absolutely.
Man, I'm just thinking about the times that I felt uncomfortable in cases. I'm just kind of like, I'm glad I'm not there anymore. I'm glad I have more. Oh, Soch, you're muted, but please jump in. But yeah, I'm glad I'm on a case where I feel comfortable.
I was just yelling my agreement. I totally agree. I got excited. I was like, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I know we're all over here in the panel box just like thumbs up. Yeah, sending hearts to each other. Well, and I think this is a great transition to our last question. And I do want to give y'all an opportunity to give any other information at the end before we say goodbye. You've been such amazing panelists. But we talked just a little bit about some archaic practices that we either no longer subscribe to or that we continue to utilize, and we need to make swift and actionable movement away from. When we were talking about how we in ABA, it is not just socialized in our communities, but in ABA, we teach our autistic clients how to categorize. And that includes categorization along the binary, meaning male and female. And that, from my perspective, is an archaic practice that needs to get put up on a shelf and never dusted off again. But how do we make ABA more affirming for the quilt bag community? And are there any archaic practices that we're no longer using, or ones that we're currently using that we need to make swift and actionable change towards?
I have an idea about the pronoun categorization. So I know that when you think about the pronoun categorization, a lot of people think about pecs, and like you'll see a person on a pec, you're supposed to assume their pronouns and gender and then say them. But something that you can do is like say you're in a classroom or a daycare, and then you can use the pronouns of the people in the classroom or daycare. So you're not assuming because you know those people. So you're just kind of like, your friend Melinda over there, what pronouns does she use? Can you use those in a sentence? Or if you are in a household and you are using pecs, you can show somebody a pec and be like, this person uses they, them pronouns. Can you use that in a sentence? Because it is still using the same, skill, but yet there's no assumptions.
That's genius. I love that so much. That's really, really cool. Now,
Thank you.
I'm going to think about that for like 2 weeks now. That was really good.
I did it when I had the pronoun categorization goal. I had this little kid who would just mix them up interchangeably. And I was like, inwardly just like, go you. But I still had this goal. And I was just kind of like, your friend over there, somebody who you've known for months because you're in the same classroom, what are their pronouns? That way it is real world applicable. And it is, that kind of thing. So that's what I wanted to say about that specific goal.
I almost feel like I'm about to be a Debbie Downer, guys, and I hate to do it. I absolutely love that idea. First and foremost, I think that is, like Shosh said, genius. And in a perfect world, that is exactly what we will be able to do. I think that it is we especially as professionals in this field have to be cognizant of what the cultural desires are. We have to respect those things in the same way that we want to be respected and acknowledged. And I think that sometimes that will mean just having the conversation. Have the conversation with the parents, have the conversation with the family, and see what is acceptable to them. And at the point where that clashes with our own moral standards, or at the point where it becomes harmful to us or people in our community, I think we step away from it. But I think we do have a duty to be respectful of what those families' wishes are. So that may mean teaching along the binary and along the binary only. As much as I hate that, because it is very limiting. It does kind of limit the exposure of these children to things that they may identify as, which is crushing and heartbreaking. But we just have to be respectful. We just have to be respectful of it as much as possible.
Oh, Nikki, you're muted, but you look really good on mute.
So you're saying clear it with the parents first before doing that goal?
In hopes of preventing more issues, yes.
Well, and from my perspective, I do believe that there is so much more that our field can do, and I really strongly believe that one of these ways is by getting rid of the Lobos article that was written years ago. The detraction that was written about it was not enough. It needs to be removed from the history of our science so that people cannot utilize it against human beings again. And there needs to be more representation within the research. I mean, representation of autistic individuals, because how dare we as a community be providing ABA services to the autistic community primarily, And we don't have proper representation in research and application. How dare we? And I feel the same when it comes to the QUILTBAG community. How dare we be supporting the autistic community where there is a higher likelihood of being on the gender spectrum and identifying within the QUILTBAG community, and we don't have proper representation and research development and application of what we are researching? I just get very passionate about that, but would love to hear y'all say that.
Did you have anything to add, or can I go on?
Do you, Boo?
Shosh.
Oh, Shosh. Okay.
Shosh. Okay. I also wanted to talk about stimming. I love stimming. Everybody stims.
Yes! I stimmed the whole freaking panel, y'all.
I've been stimming the whole panel, and I have not been diagnosed. Okay, maybe when I was a kid, I may have been diagnosed with like ADHD or something, but like,
I'm told it's neurodivergent. Mm-hmm.
I have not been diagnosed with anything recently, but boy, do I stim. And I think everybody has the right to stim. Every once in a while, we do need to curb stimming if it is not, if somebody stims so much that they can't make a sandwich or go to the store or, you know, something like that. But other than that, if the stimming is done on somebody's own time and they have the control to stop the stimming every once in a while when they need to, like, stimming is just fine. Everybody does it. And I hope that a lot of, I'm pretty sure that most people at Kadiant understand that stimming is like comfortable and fine as long as it's functional. But I have spoken to adult autistic people that have spoken about getting stims trained out of them. And like, I spoke to somebody recently who has never, you know, been in contact with Kadiant, but like they're an older autistic person and they're like, man, I used to like bounce, but I got it trained out of me, so I don't do it anymore. So it manifests in different ways now. And I'm just like, oof, that I couldn't imagine somebody reaching over and like putting their hand on my leg when I've been bouncing it. Like, I had to go to like a funeral a couple weeks ago, and I was leg bouncing so aggressively that weekend that like later on in the week my calves hurt. Like, that was just how I got through that weekend, and it really helped me out. It was the way that I calmed down, and like telling somebody to stop a stim is just, it's so much. And why?
Well, and it can be so destructive as well. Just to be clear, because I don't want to be rude to anybody, and I don't want to come off the unexpected way. I'm neurodivergent. I have been diagnosed with ADHD. I was diagnosed the first time when I was 2 years old, and that's a very young age to be diagnosed, but it's because I am living with a profound version. And some microaggressions that I experience from that are, wow, you have such awesome energy. I wish I could have yours. And it's I appreciate it. Especially when people know I'm living with ADHD and it's in the right context that they're talking about it. But when I get home, my relationships suffer because of what I'm living with. And the stimming that I engage in is really just movement, right? I have so much energy and I need proprioceptive feedback at a higher rate and intensity and frequency than most people do. Even those on the ADHD spectrum, I'm on that very high side for proprioceptive feedback. And so it's a challenging thing to tell somebody like stop stimming. I want to give a shout out to Joy Johnson. I took a CEU, so a continuing education unit from her recently through Black ABA or BABA. And Joy Johnson is an autistic BCBA who provided a supervision CEU from an autistic perspective. And one of the pieces that I left with was, first of all, using autistic, because identity at first is taking that word back. Okay, I started in adult services. So for me, I believe people-centered was saying someone with autism, but she taught me and she broke it down in a way I understood. And the second was that we do have literature that supports funders not targeting stimming, because stimming helps with anxiety. We take away stimming, and what we're reinforcing, masking, and masking is exhausting. Mm-hmm. And that is the same thing that we see here, even in the quilt bag community. When you're talking about changing your behavior, you're talking about masking who you are to make other people comfortable. When we really need other people to check themselves, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Self-check is a very good thing to have on hand. And recognize, what are the biases that are at play right now? Why is this bothering me? This is not on that other human. This is on me.
What are the fears? What are the fears that's driving this desire for me to stop you from being comfortable? Absolutely.
I just love it so much. Y'all are just so fantastic. And I want to thank y'all so much for joining. But before we transition out, I would love to open it up for an opportunity. If y'all have any last thoughts, any shout outs, y'all know that I am a fan of letting people know what you would tell your child self, but you can do whatever you want or nothing at all.
Well, just a shout out to Shosh and Nikki and you, Amanda. Y'all are amazing. This has been an amazing experience. I am, again, very grateful to have been on this platform with you, very knowledgeable people. I've learned so much. Shosh, oh my goodness. We have so much more talking that we need to do, because there's so much learning that I need to do.
I was just going to say, let's keep in touch.
Yes, please, please.
Anytime.
So yeah, shout out to all of y'all. Shout out to Kadiant for allowing us to have this platform, and existing and yelling at the top of our lungs about who we are and being unapologetic about it. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything to say, but if anybody else says something, I will springboard off of it. But yeah, I'm really happy to have met you, Shosh. It's been really great to meet you. I hope that we do get to talk more and keep in touch. I mean, keeping in touch at Kadiant is a little on the harder side. I'll be like, hi, through Teams, or
Yeah.
but you're super pleasant.
Oh, thank you. Same to you. I've seen both of you in the EDI group. I've seen your names floating around.
We lost your sound.
Oh no! What? Okay, hold on.
Oh, I can hear you on my side, so you're good to go. As long as I can hear you. I'm sorry, Jeremy. You can go.
I can hear you, but you are quiet.
My headphones are still connected. Sorry, I am DJing right now. These are my microphone.
Maybe it's me.
What was I gonna say? Oh, I've seen your names floating around before, but I've never had the chance to talk to y'all in a full conversation. So I'm really glad that we had this opportunity. I just want to throw out there, in spirit of Pride Month, we're not wrapping up, we're halfway through it, but take some time to sit with yourself. What makes you the gender that you are? What makes you the sexuality that you are? How do you know that? What resonates within you? What makes you feel comfortable in your presentation or your identification? And once you take the time to really flesh that out, think about how other people might experience that, right? So if you're a cis woman or you're a cis person, what makes you a man? What makes you a woman? Right? And figuring out those little particular things might help make other identities that aren't your own make more sense. That's just my challenge. That's what I like to ask people to do, is to really take a deep dive into their own personal experience of gender and sexuality and figure out what makes them who they are, because I think it kind of makes you look at other people a different way too.
I like that. Man, thinking about identity, it's hard. I'm just kind of what makes me asexual? Oh, but it's worth thinking about. Just man. Also, I like what you said, and I was going to say something, but I forgot. But yes, happy Pride, everybody. Happy Pride, everybody, and happy Juneteenth, everybody. It's supposed to be a holiday or something soon, hopefully, if the right people vote for it. So. Yeah.
Yes, cannot wait. Well, and I just wanted to say, like, we are talking about decolonizing when we're talking about autism acceptance, when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, when we're talking about the quilt bag community. This is all focused on human rights and being able to decolonize, because as we said, Two-Spirit came prior to white community coming and taking over and colonizing. So each of us has the responsibility to engage in decolonization, especially allies. That is your responsibility. And each of us plays a different part. So I hope that y'all get an opportunity to listen to our Black in Behavior podcast for Queer Black Juneteenth this month, because it's going to give you a lot of great snippets on that. Shosh's It Takes a Village interview that came out at the beginning of the month. Great information about how to decolonize as well. And then we did get the opportunity to have Jeremy and Nikki, the Black in Behavior podcast hosts, on It Takes a Village this month as well. And we want to hear more from the community. Please reach out to feedback@kadiant.com. We will work to get that information to Nikki, Jeremy, and Shosh. But what we ask is that you respect their emotional energy and you respect their spoons. And that's why we ask you to go through feedback@kadiant.com so that we can work to protect them as well. Because guess what? That's an organization's responsibility. And thank you all so much for joining us today. This was such a valuable opportunity for everyone, and we are so grateful for your time. And thank you all who are joining us today for this fabulous quilt bag panel.
Yeah. Thank you for coming to listen to us. Thank you for coming to the panel. Thank you for caring.
Yes, thank you.
All those things.
Right, all of those things. All right, y'all. Bye.
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 Bye. Happy Pride!
Happy Pride.